we're going to tell the Colonel Lamb story.
About his hand.
About his
Well, it's 26.
There's a fly on your chin.
2016, I had the privilege to go back to Vietnam for the first time since I was released as a prisoner of war. And 11 of us, naval aviators and Air Force aviators, went over and we had a meeting with about 17 or 18 North Vietnamese fighter pilots that many of us had actually flown against in the air war in Vietnam. And I had the opportunity to meet one of the MiG-17 pilots that I engaged in a dogfight 43 years prior to that. There were 2 of them left alive out of the 6 that we engaged. And this was Colonel Lamb, who lived in the Hanoi area, and I met with him, and we sat down and we talked about our dogfight 43 years prior to that. And amazingly, both of us remembered it almost exactly the way it happened, both from his perspective and mine. And anyway, we talked about that, and afterwards we started talking about our personal lives, and found out that he was a father of 3 daughters. I'm a father of 3 daughters. We both retired from the military at the same rank. He a colonel and I a captain in the Navy. And he had 7 grandchildren. I had 5 grandchildren. So I made a joke with him, which he laughed at, luckily. I said, "Well, Colonel, I beat you in the air, but you beat me in the grandchildren department." And he laughed at that, and he thought that was funny. And anyway, we talked a little bit more, and then I said, "Well, something you don't know about me, Colonel, is that later in the war, after our dogfight, 3 months later, I said I was shot down, and I became a prisoner of war in Wallow Prison here, one we called Hanoi Hilton." And I said, from that experience, I said, "This is my remembrance of the war." And I showed him my hand, which they had amputated my thumb in prison. And he looked at my hand and he looked at me, and his look of surprise on his face, which turned to not pity, but he turned to sympathy. And he reached out and he took my hand in both of his hands, and through the interpreter that we were talking with, he said to me, he said, "I am so sorry for the suffering that you encountered in my country." And I mean, just a true, from the heart. He is so, to me, that we were adversaries in the air. He was trying to do his job, we were trying to do our job. But after the war, it was time to put those things behind us, and we established a very warm relationship at that moment. And later on, we went out into we were in a hotel. We went out into the hallway afterwards for an interview with the Vietnamese, and he reached over and he put his arm around me, and I put my arm around him, and they took a good picture of that. So it was a kind of a moving moment for me to think that, after all those years, that here we were, once adversaries, and now we were friends. We went from dogfights to détente, and it was really a nice moment.
So beautiful. And their helicopter flew over. So back up to one thing you don't know about me, and tell the story of your losing your thumb in the shootout. So tell it to Carrie.
So I said to the Colonel Lamb, I said, actually, there's one thing that you don't know about me, I said, was that 3 months after our dogfight, I said I was shot down by surface-to-air missile, and I became a prisoner of war over in Wallow Prison here in Hanoi. That's the place we called the Hanoi Hilton. And I showed him my hand, and I said my hand was injured in the shoot down, and I said after several days, the prison people cut my thumb off. So I said, "This is my remembrance of the war." And he looked at my hand and he looked at me rather surprised, and then a look of sympathy on his face, and he reached out and he took my hand in both of his hands and held it, and through the interpreter that we were talking through, he said, "I am so sorry for the suffering that you encountered in my country." and he squeezed my hand. And I think, you know, it was very heartfelt. He didn't have to do that. And so we talked then after that, and we went out into the hallway from the big banquet room we were in there at the hotel, and we had to have a obligatory TV interview. And so when we got out there, he put his arm around me, and I put my arm around him, and we said what we had to say to the TV cameras. And it was a very, very rewarding moment for me, and I still think of that. Here we were 43 years apart. He was just doing his job, and I was doing mine in that time. And after the war's over, you know, it was time to let things go. And I laughed and said we went from dogfights to détente in a brief moment there of his moments with me. So anyway, that was good. I'm glad I went, and it was a very rewarding experience.
Beautiful. Excellent. Tail marker, just walk in and give us a vertical clap, Terry. No, make sure Patrick gets it.
You ready?
Yeah.
Tail slate.
Got it.
Okay,
Okay.
up. I want to just.
Get just a close-up of you holding up your hand, so let me move a little bit. Does that work for you, Patrick?
Yeah, I want to pick up a little bit about doo-doo here.
Okay.
Sure. All right, let me just get level here. Carrie, come stand over here a second.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah, stand here, Carrie, so he can talk to you there. Let me just get focused here. Yeah, hold your hand out for just a second. Let me get in focus. Let me move in a little bit. Sorry. Oh, I got more lens. Never mind. Windy.
Yeah, well, luckily
Okay.
his back is turned.
All right. Okay, so put your hand down. Okay, so you're telling the story and you raise your hand. Yeah. Talking about you lost your thumb.
Yeah.
And he walked up and he put his hands in your hand.
So he took my hand in both of his hands and looked me in the eye, and he said through the interpreter, I'm sorry for the sufferings that I'm sorry for the suffering you went through in my country. And it was a really heartfelt sentiment, I think. And we became, you know, went from dogfights to détente there in a moment,
All right.
43 years later.
So go ahead and put both hands down and do the whole thing again. All right, so one thing I don't think you know about me.
One thing I don't think you know about me, Colonel Lamb, was that 3 months after our dogfight, I was shot down by a surface-to-air missile, and I became a prisoner of war in Wallow Prison. That's what we called Hanoi Hilton. And I told him that I had been injured in the shoot-down, and after several days that they amputated my thumb. So I said, this is my memories, my memento from the war here. And he looked at me, very surprised, looked back at my hand, and then a look of sympathy on his face. He reached out and he took my hand in both of his, and through the interpreter he said, I'm sorry for the suffering that you encountered in my country, and squeezed my hand, and we just had a moment there. And I like to say we went from dogfights to détente in just a moment. And we continued to talk about family, and then we went out into the passageway of the hotel from where we were in the big conference room. And
Okay, just put your hands down now. Excellent. Okay,
Beautiful.
good. I just needed to cut
Yeah,
away
that's a cut.
tighter. All
Okay,
right,
so I just
Patrick,
want to
continue.
get a little piece about
Sure.
doo-doo here.
Okay.
And then Bill found a great shot. Him walking up these aisles. See the POW flag with these trees?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
Carrie,
wow.
we should probably move the
moved the van.
down here. The key is on the
Oh, it is. Oh.
on the dash, I believe. So let's find a new frame for this, Bill.
Okay.